Welcome to Review Number 10, The French Revolution. In 1789, France was one of Europe's largest and wealthiest kingdoms, rich in agricultural lands and natural resources. Its population of 26 million citizens was growing rapidly. Historically, French society was made up of three groups known as the Three Estates. The first estate were the clergy of the Roman Catholic Church, made up about 1% of the population. The second estate, the nobility, made up about 2% of the population. The third estate consisted of everybody else, or about 97% of that 26 million. The 20-some million members of the third estate included a wide variety of people. The bourgeoisie, or upper middle class, city workers, artisans such as carpenters and masons, and the rural peasants. The bourgeoisie included merchants, manufacturers, doctors, and lawyers. They often had a significant amount of money, as you can see by these pictures showing them dressed in the latest fashions. So while they had significant money, they were frustrated because they had no political power. Simply, they had been born into the wrong families. The King of France ruled as an absolute monarch, following in the tradition of his grandfather Louis XIV. Here you can see a list of all the things that the king had control or power over. The economy of France was based primarily on agriculture. The first two estates paid no taxes at all and were known as the privileged classes. The third estate bore the brunt of all the taxes, and the peasant farmers bore a large portion of that. Taxes were paid by the farmers in the form of the crops that they raised. If there was a bad harvest or too much rain, the government would still take its full tax amount, not particularly concerned that what was left for the farmer's family might not be enough. Here we see in some cartoon drawings of the day representations of the first two estates crushing the third estate under the burden of carrying them. France is essentially bankrupt or broke. Louis XVI, here the King of France, leads an incredibly extravagant lifestyle along with his wife Marie Antoinette. To make ends meet, they have been borrowing money from the banks, and suddenly the banks decide they will not lend the government or the king any more money, fearing that he will not be able to repay them. Louis's got to do something. He doesn't want to give up his lifestyle, so he's got to find another source of income. What Louis wishes to do is to tax the two estates that pay no taxes, the nobles and the clergy. But to do so, he must get them to agree. He calls a meeting known as the Estates General, which is all three of the traditional estates. In the Estates General, each estate had only one vote. Traditionally, the first two estates had worked together to always outvote the third estate, or the people. The third estate wished for a change. They want individual votes rather than a single vote for the entire estate. With individual votes, they could easily outvote the first two estates and effect changes that would be in their interest. We must remember that in 1789, the French citizens were aware of the success of the American Revolution, the Constitution, the American Bill of Rights, as well as a limited constitutional monarchy and the English Bill of Rights in England. The Third Estate declares itself to be the National Assembly and vows an oath that they will not go home until they have created a written constitution for France. This oath is known as the Tennis Court Oath. Louis XVI, desperate for money, eventually gives in and orders the three estates to work together to establish a constitution for France. And in this cartoon from the time, we can see those three traditional estates working together to hammer out a constitution. While the National Assembly is working on this constitution, Louis XVI moves troops to Paris and to his palace at Versailles. The citizens of Paris Interpret this move by Louis XVI as an attempt to crush the Constitution and respond by storming the Bastille prison in a search for weapons and to free political prisoners. In France today, the storming of the Bastille is celebrated much like we celebrate the 4th of July. Across France, in a period known as the Great Fear, peasants believe that the government is trying to crush the rebellion and looking to starve them into submission. Peasants attack the nobility and the church looking for food, and things get out of hand. The National Assembly believes that reforms will be the only thing to stop the violence. As a result, it revokes tithes, feudal dues, and all the privileges of the nobility. All French citizens are now equal. They also adopt the Declaration of the Rights of Man. The Declaration of the Rights of Man is essentially France's Bill of Rights. It addresses many of the same ideas and concepts of the American and English Bills of Rights. As the economy continues to worsen, the price of bread skyrockets, a loaf of bread costing as much as a month's wages for the average worker. A mob of angry women marched the 20 miles from Paris to Versailles and forced Louis XVI, his wife Marie Antoinette, and their children to move back to Paris. In 1791, the National Assembly creates what is in effect a constitutional monarchy. This new constitution limits the power of the king, and since the Constitution is in place, the National Assembly is no longer required and is replaced by what is known as the Legislative Assembly. Louis XVI, never a strong ruler, is greatly frustrated by the loss of power that he has received with the Constitution. Out of frustration and anger, he tries to get away with his family, hoping to escape to Austrian-held Netherlands. However, for Louis, he and his family are caught at the border. As the people are disappointed by the idea of their king trying to escape from them, they begin to talk about life without a king. In other words, making France a republic. The Legislative Assembly suspends the office of a king. France now no longer has a king, and Louis XVI and his family are imprisoned. Since France no longer has a king, they need a new constitution. The Legislative Assembly is disbanded and is replaced with a new body known as the National Convention. Its job is to create a new constitution without a king. The National Convention first act is to declare Louis a traitor and to put him on trial for treason. Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette are tried separately and are both found guilty of treason, and as a result are executed. With the execution of the King and Queen of France, the monarchies surrounding France begin planning an invasion in hopes to overthrow the revolution before it spreads to their countries. The National Convention creates a committee known as the Committee of Public Safety to deal with this threat of invasion. The Committee of Public Safety creates a special court known as the Revolutionary Tribunal, which is to take on the enemies of the revolution. The Revolutionary Tribunal uses harsh tactics to remove anybody who is felt to be opposed to their policy or a threat to the revolution. This time period is known as the Reign of Terror. The Reign of Terror was led by Robespierre, a member of the Revolutionary Tribunal. It was known as the Reign of Terror because you could never tell when you might be pointed out and executed for treason or for activities against the revolution. In the nearly year-long Reign of Terror, nearly 40,000 people were executed, some 16,000 by the guillotine, a new invention designed to make the execution more humane, painless, and efficient. Finally, a few members of the National Convention, feeling that Robespierre had gotten out of hand, had him arrested and executed. Robespierre's execution ended the Reign of Terror. In 1795, a new government was established known as the Directory. Its executive branch consisted of 5 directors sharing power. And in effect, the wealthy were in charge of the country yet again. It was not an effective government, and no one was very happy about it. After 6 years of revolution, things didn't seem to be going very well at all. Finally, Britain organizes yet another invasion of France. The citizens of France believe that the only person who can save them from this invasion is a young general by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte. After 6 years of revolution, the citizens are tired, and they are afraid and believe that Napoleon is the only one that can save them. Encouraged by this popular support, Napoleon Bonaparte seizes power in what is known as a coup d'etat, essentially taking government in his own hands. Thank you for joining us as we reviewed the French Revolution. Our next review, we'll take a look at Napoleon Bonaparte's reign.